You were certain it was the right choice until it wasn't. The gut feeling, the logic, the confidence, all of it told you that you were making the right move. But then reality hit. Regret, self-doubt, and the nagging question, how did I not see this coming? The truth is, you aren't alone. We've all made decisions we later regretted, convinced that we had thought everything through. But what if I told you that every mistake you've ever made wasn't an accident? That behind every failure is a hidden force, one that Carl Jung uncovered, but the world has largely ignored. What if your mistakes weren't random? What if, instead of being a series of unfortunate choices, they were part of a larger pattern? One that you keep repeating without even realizing it. You tell yourself, this time will be different. But it isn't. You fall into the same relationships that hurt you. You sabotage your own success at the worst possible moment. You chase the wrong goals again and again. Jung believed that our unconscious mind controls more than we think. Beneath our rational decisions lie hidden fears, desires, and weaknesses, ones we refuse to acknowledge. And until you recognize these forces, they will keep leading you in circles, making the same mistakes, over and over again. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This is the truth we were never taught. Your mistakes aren't just bad luck or poor judgment. They are messages, signs from your unconscious mind, trying to reveal the parts of yourself you've ignored. The relationships you destroy, the opportunities you miss, the wrong paths you take, none of it is random. The problem isn't that you don't know how to make good decisions. The problem is that a part of you, one you've buried deep, wants to make the wrong ones. And until you confront that hidden force, it will control your life without you even realizing it. So the real question is, are you ready to face the truth? You like to believe you're in control, that every decision you make is yours alone. But what if I told you that's an illusion? Beneath the surface of your conscious mind, there exists another force, one you rarely acknowledge. It's the part of you that hesitates when opportunity knocks, the part that chooses comfort over challenge, the part that whispers, "You don't deserve this," just as success is within reach. This hidden force is shaping your decisions, guiding your failures, and ensuring that history keeps repeating itself. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the collection of thoughts, desires, and fears we refuse to face. And until you confront it, your mistakes will never truly be accidents. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious mind doesn't just influence us, it controls us. Every suppressed emotion, every ignored truth, every hidden fear, all of it shapes the way you think, act, and react. Your shadow holds everything you deny about yourself. The insecurities you pretend don't exist, the anger you suppress, the impulses you judge in others but secretly feel within yourself. And the more you reject these parts, the more power they have over you. Have you ever said, "I don't know why I did that," after making a terrible choice? That's the shadow at work. It operates in secrecy, pulling the strings from behind the curtain, making decisions on your behalf, decisions you only recognize when it's too late. So the question is, if you're not in control, then who is? Most people believe mistakes are random, unfortunate missteps, but Jung's theory suggests something far more unsettling. Every mistake is a message from the unconscious, trying to get your attention. Think about the worst decision you've ever made. Was it truly random? Or was it the product of a deeper, hidden pattern? One you never realized was guiding you. The toxic relationship you stayed in too long. the opportunity you walked away from out of fear, the self-destruction at the peak of your success. These weren't accidents. They were moments when your unconscious mind overpowered your rational self. Your shadow doesn't care about logic. It doesn't care about success. It only cares about one thing: being seen. And if you refuse to acknowledge it, it will force you to pay attention. Through failure. Society tells us that failure is just a misstep, a natural part of learning. But Jung's theory suggests something far more profound. Failure isn't just a lesson, it's a symptom of unconscious desires clashing with conscious goals, a sign that your suppressed fears, impulses, and beliefs are fighting for control. And the more you ignore them, the more chaos they create. So the next time you fail, don't dismiss it as bad luck. Don't run from it. Instead, ask yourself, what part of me wanted this to happen? Because until you confront that answer, your mistakes will never truly be behind you. You've told yourself, this time will be different, but it never is. The same toxic relationships, the same self-doubt, the same habits that pull you backward when you should be moving forward. Most people think mistakes are isolated incidents, random miscalculations. But what if they weren't? What if your failures were patterns? Not coincidences, but loops you are trapped in, repeating themselves over and over again. Carl Jung believed that our unconscious mind drives our behavior far more than we realize. That every mistake we make isn't just a failure. It's a reflection of something deeper inside us. An unseen force pulling us toward the same missteps, despite our best efforts to change. So if you keep falling into the same traps, ask yourself, is this really bad luck? Or is something inside me making these choices for me? Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Think about that for a moment. The life you're living, the choices you make, the mistakes you repeat. What if they aren't really yours? What if they're the product of an unconscious force, one you've never fully acknowledged? Jung's forgotten insight reveals a truth that many people refuse to face. We don't just make mistakes, we are drawn to them. We are creatures of habit, repeating cycles we don't even realize we're stuck in. A person who was abandoned in childhood may unconsciously choose partners who abandon them. Someone who grew up in chaos may unknowingly create conflict in their own life just to feel something familiar. It's not fate. It's not bad luck. It's a script written by the parts of yourself you refuse to see. And until you bring these hidden patterns into the light, they will keep running your life from the shadows. So the real question is, who is in control? You, or the patterns buried in your mind? The evidence is everywhere. A person who keeps choosing toxic relationships, even when they swear they want something better. A talented entrepreneur who self-destructs the moment success is within reach. A leader who makes impulsive decisions that destroy everything they've built. These aren't coincidences. These are unconscious patterns running on repeat. Take the case of a woman who always ends up with emotionally unavailable partners. She tells herself it's bad luck, that she just attracts the wrong people. But if she looked deeper, she'd see the truth. She's choosing them, not consciously, but because her unconscious mind has linked love with emotional distance. It's familiar, it's comfortable. It's a script she doesn't even realize she's following. Or the successful businessman who, just as he reaches the peak of his career, makes a reckless decision that ruins everything. He tells himself it was an accident, but deep down, his unconscious mind fears success because failure is what he knows best. Jung's insight is clear. We don't break patterns by wishing for change. We break them by seeing them for what they are. The human brain is wired for patterns. It craves familiarity, even when familiarity is destructive. Cognitive biases, deeply ingrained mental shortcuts, are a major reason we unconsciously repeat our failures. Take confirmation bias, for example. It makes us seek out evidence that supports our existing beliefs, even when those beliefs are harming us. If you believe deep down that you're unworthy of love, your brain will focus on rejection while ignoring acceptance, reinforcing the very pattern you're trapped in. Then there's projection, when we attribute our own hidden feelings to others. Someone afraid of their own ambition might label successful people as selfish or corrupt, just to avoid facing their own fear of stepping into power. But the most dangerous of all, self-sabotage. The unconscious compulsion to destroy what we claim to want. It's the reason why some people quit just before success, why others push away love when they finally find it. The mind clings to what it knows, even when what it knows is pain. So the question is, are you living by choice, or by the patterns you've never questioned? We treat mistakes like unfortunate accidents, something to regret, something to forget. But what if every mistake you've ever made was trying to tell you something? Carl Jung believed that failure wasn't just a misstep, it was a message, a signal from the unconscious, pointing directly to the parts of yourself you've ignored. The relationships you ruined, the chances you didn't take, the moments where fear held you back, none of it was random. Your unconscious mind is always speaking to you, but most people refuse to listen. Instead, they blame external circumstances, call it bad luck, and move on, only to repeat the same mistake again. But what if, instead of running from your failures, you confronted them? What if every mistake you've ever made wasn't a setback, but a clue, a map, leading you to the one thing you've been avoiding your entire life, your true self? Jung believed that every mistake you make is a reflection of the parts of yourself you refuse to acknowledge. The failures you repeat, they aren't coincidences. They are the hidden aspects of your mind forcing their way into your reality. Take someone who constantly chooses toxic relationships. They tell themselves it's bad luck, that they just attract the wrong people. But Jung would say otherwise. He would say that a part of them needs this cycle, that deep inside, there's an unconscious belief, maybe from childhood, maybe from past experiences, that love is supposed to be painful. And until they confront that belief, they will keep repeating the pattern. The truth is uncomfortable. Your mistakes aren't external forces acting against you. They are reflections of you. Every failure is a fragment of the self you've buried, and every time you ignore it, it will find another way to resurface until you finally face it. So ask yourself, what is your greatest mistake trying to reveal about you? We spend our lives running from our flaws, hiding our fears, suppressing our desires. But Jung argued that the parts of ourselves we fear the most aren't our enemies. They are our greatest teachers. Your shadow, the hidden, unconscious side of you, holds the key to your transformation. The insecurities you push away, they show you where you need growth. The mistakes you keep repeating, they reveal the lessons you haven't yet learned. Most people try to fix themselves by ignoring their shadow. They force positivity. They suppress anger, fear, and doubt. But suppression doesn't erase these parts. It strengthens them. The more you push your shadow away, the more power it has over you. The only way to break the cycle is to turn around and face it, to acknowledge your fears, to understand your mistakes, to see your shadow not as a curse, but as a guide. Because once you do, you take back control. And for the first time, you, not your past, not your fears, become the one writing your future. Imagine sailing a ship through an open sea. Everything seems fine until, out of nowhere, you crash into an iceberg. You recover, you move on. But then, a few months later, it happens again. At some point, you have to ask yourself, is this really bad luck? Or am I ignoring something below the surface? Your life works the same way. The mistakes you keep making aren't just random misfortunes. They are the icebergs you refuse to study. The hidden parts of your mind buried beneath the surface, shaping every decision you make. Most people keep sailing blindly, hoping that things will change. But the ones who break free, they're the ones who stop, turn back, and finally look beneath the water. Because once you see the full picture, once you understand the truth, you can finally change your course. And this time, you won't crash. Most people deny their patterns. They make excuses. They tell themselves, that was just bad luck, or next time will be different. But if your mistakes keep repeating, luck has nothing to do with it. The first step to breaking the cycle is radical self-honesty. No more blaming circumstances. No more pretending you don't see the pattern. Look at your past mistakes. What connects them? What choices do you keep making that lead to the same outcome? It's easy to blame others, to think they betrayed me, or that opportunity just wasn't right. But the hard truth is this: you are the common denominator in every mistake you've ever made. Jung believed that the unconscious mind shapes our reality, and until you confront the truth about yourself, your fears, your insecurities, your hidden desires, you will keep reliving the same failures. So, what are the mistakes you keep repeating? And more importantly, why? Once you recognize the pattern, the next step is to understand why it exists. This is where shadow work comes in. Jung's concept of the shadow is simple. It is the part of you that you refuse to acknowledge, your fears, your suppressed emotions, the traits you criticize in others but secretly see in yourself. And if you don't face these hidden aspects, they will control you from the dark. So, how do you bring the shadow into the light? By asking the questions that most people avoid. Start with this: what part of me benefits from this failure? It's an uncomfortable question, but it forces you to dig deeper. Do you sabotage relationships because deep down you fear abandonment? Do you avoid opportunities because success would mean stepping out of your comfort zone? Do you create chaos in your life because peace feels unfamiliar? Write it all down. No filters, no justifications, just the raw, unedited truth. Because until you see your unconscious motivations clearly, you will never break free from them. Most people think they can change their lives by changing external circumstances. A new job, a new relationship, a fresh start. But what happens? The same problems follow them. Why? Because the real issue was never external, it was internal. You can change your environment, but if you don't change yourself, you'll recreate the same struggles wherever you go. You'll attract the same toxic relationships, fall into the same self-sabotaging habits, repeat the same destructive cycles. Jung understood this better than anyone. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. You think you're making new choices, but if you haven't dealt with the root cause, the hidden fears and beliefs running your mind, you're just playing out the same story in a different setting. So stop trying to fix the outside world. Start where the real change happens, inside your own mind. Because once you master your inner world, everything else will follow. The struggle to understand oneself is nothing new. Throughout history, the greatest minds have faced the same challenge. How do you master your mind before it masters you? Nietzsche believed that true strength comes from embracing contradictions. He argued that instead of running from discomfort, we must lean into it. One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. In other words, your struggles, your mistakes, your internal conflicts aren't weaknesses. They are raw material for transformation. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic philosopher, took a different approach. He believed that power comes from seeing things exactly as they are, not as we wish they were. He trained himself to accept reality without illusion, saying, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Both of them understood the same fundamental truth. Self-mastery is the key to breaking free from destructive patterns. So, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you keep running from your unconscious? Or will you finally turn around and face it?